Introduction to manufacturing processes. Uh, you're not going to be an expert when you're done with this, but you will know about the different processes. So what is manufacturing, the processes? We'll talk a little bit about the book, very little bit about the book. So manufacture, manus meaning hand and factus meaning to make, so make by hand. This first appeared in English in 1567. Before that, we used to have crafting. They got two ways of defining this, technology and economically. We'll talk about that a bit. So if we're talking about the technological definition, we're talking about how do we change the form or function of a product or service or something like that. It also includes the assembly part of that. So it's the whole process from start to finish. Now value is something that when you change the form or the function, that adds value. And value is being defined by the customer. What's he willing to pay for? So hopefully if you're in a manufacturing environment, you're adding value to something, a product, and the customer's going to pay you for it. If not, you got some issues, okay? Now there are a couple different ways of classifying industries. The primary industries, they take the natural resources, like soil and agriculture or mining to get the ore that we convert into steel or aluminum. Secondary industries, these are the ones that take the primary industries, the raw materials, and convert them into something we might recognize. Coils of steel, the refrigerator, our house, electricity. And finally, there's a third industry that builds on all of this, and that's the service sector. These are the people that really don't create a product, but they provide some kind of service. And you see that as an economy matures, it goes more and more towards the tertiary industries, the service industry. We're going to focus on the manufactured products. These are final products made by the manufacturing industry, consumer goods. This is what you recognize, cars, refrigerators, houses, TVs, all electronics, right? Then there's the other one, capital goods. These are purchased by companies to produce the other consumer goods. So that'd be like the coils of steel, service trucks and buses, the machines in a factory, construction equipment, this type of thing. We don't see it directly, but the companies will buy it to give us the consumer goods. Okay, you hear a lot about the GDP, the gross domestic product. So basically manufacturing accounts for 12% of the GDP in the United States. And it fluctuates some, but 12% plus or minus. The rest, or most of it, is by the service industry. This is retail, telecom, those types of things. But the service sector couldn't exist without the manufactured sector. They need us, right? If we didn't make steel, there would be no way for the service industry to have buses to serve people. So it's very important manufacturing. This is the foundation on which the GDP is based. And the quantity can be vary tremendously, and the variety can vary tremendously. So if you're talking about the quantities, how much do you produce on a given type? If you're talking about a commodity item, I think an average beer will make 1,200 bottles of beer in a minute, right? Or you can get low production. If you look at like Southworth, for example, they could take a couple weeks to complete just one product. So there's low production, generally less than 100 units per year. Medium, 1,000 to 10,000 units per year, and high production, millions of units, right? Variety refers to different types of products made, and flexibility. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, I'm not going to spend much time on this one. I really don't like this slide. Take, for example, product variety and production quantity. Let's use paint for an example. You can go in and get virtually any type of color of paint you want, right? And the quantity used is just incredible. And I don't know what he means by this model, so let's just skip it. I don't think there's a relationship. I'd like to see his actual numbers that he bases on. But it's in the book, so I just kept it in. Yeah, this is manufacturing capability. refers very closly to productivity, but this is the technical or physical limitations that they have to make products. And there are three dimensions you got to worry about. One is technically, are you actually able to make it? How much can you make using the technology you have? Physical product, is it too big, the product, and how much can you make on one? If you're making a big old Caterpillar bulldozer, you're not going to make as many of those as you are a little John Deere front-end dozer. Production capacity, how much can be produced in a given period of time? And these are all limitations. And this is where people really make their money, by increasing these, all of them, setting those limits higher. The materials in manufacturing, it's all over. If there's a material, it's probably used somewhere in manufacturing. There are metals, you got the steel, the ferrous metals, or you got aluminum, copper, nickel. The non-ferrous kind of don't have iron in it. Ceramics, this is like clay, aluminum. This is glass. This is stuff that has to be heated and baked. And polymers, the plastics, the different types of plastics. Manufacturing processes. When you manufacture something, you're changing the form and shape and function of that whatever it is you're making, and you increase the value. Again, value added as defined by the customer. It's usually carried out in a unit operation. What we mean by that is it's made in steps. So you drill the holes, put the bolt in, paint it, that type of thing. The two basic types of manufacturing. One is processing operations. This is where you actually take metal or whatever, and what you do is you try to change the form, okay, to the final desired product that looks like it. And then it's when they mean by discrete work parts, I mean one at a time. You see these things spit off the assembly line or off the machining line. Assembly operations is where you put these two components in, or more, and start putting them together. Just look at practically anything in your house. There's more than one part in there. Somebody had to put those things together. This is kind of a busy slide, but it basically got the manufacturing process. Again, we said it's divided into the processing or assembly. Processing can be divided into shaping processes, which include solidification, particulate, deformation, material remover. This is a turn, mill, grind, that type of thing. Property enhancement, that's heat treatment. Or surface processing, again, cleaning and coating, painting, that type of thing. Then you get into assembly. You got the joining processes. You can weld, brace, and glue it together, or mechanical. You can use bolts for threaded fasteners, and you got other types, clamps, things like that. Again, some more detail on processing operations. You got the shaping operations. That's where you change the shape of the thing, the geometry, if you will, of the material. So you take a raw casting and start making it look like a finished good. Property enhancement operations. When you heat treat something, basically you're making the metal harder or more brittle, more soft, whatever you want to do with it, but you don't change its shape. And then you got the painting, the cleaning, the treating, coating onto the surface of work, making it look good or prevent it from rust, whatever that is. And like I mentioned before, there are four categories: solidification, particulate, deformation, material removal. And we're going to get into that more through the book, so I'm not going to spend much time on this. But basically, here's an example of a solidification process. You melt some kind of material, usually it's metal, and you put it in some kind of casting, and you just basically pour it and let it turn solid, right? That's a solidification process. You got a particulate process. You got some kind of powder. You put it between two big rams, if you will, and you punch it, heat it up, whatever you have to do, and you get a you sinter it. We'll talk about that later, but basically it forms a solid. This is something like powdered metals or even plastic injection molding. Deformation, forging, this is where you just get something and just pound it. Look at your kitchen sink. That started off as a flat piece of metal, and they pounded it into the shape of a sink. That's forging. Extrusion is where you take something, and it's like a little Play-Doh thing, right? Where you stick it in there in a mold, and you squeeze it, and out comes your piece of spaghetti or whatever. That's extrusion. If you're doing material removal, basically the piece you end up with weighs somehow less than the piece you started with because you took material away from it. Turning, drilling, milling, that type of thing. Grinding. Property enhancement. This is like heat treatment. It's the biggest one. You anneal it, or you can sinter powdered metals or crystalline ceramics. But basically you're changing the process somehow, or changing the material somehow, so it's more in line with what you want as a finished product. In surface processing, there's a cleaning. You want it to be clean, get off cutting oil or whatever. Surface treatment, that's where you like sandblast, or you there's a thing called diffusion, and we'll talk about that later. But basically, you're doing something to make the surface better, smoother, whatever. And then finally, you got coating thin film. This is where you go with the exterior. This will be like electroplating or painting, galvanization. So you basically change the outside of the surface of the material. Assembly ops, we got the permanent type, like I said, welding. A lot of you are taking the welding class, you know that very well. Brazing, still done a little bit. Soldering, adhesive bonding, these are all still used. Mechanical assembly, these are things that can be assembled or disassembled. Threaded fastener. If you've worked on a car, lawnmower, anytime you had to turn a screw to take something apart, you've done mechanical assembly. And joints are permanent, like rivets, where you just actually physically, instead of using a threaded bolt, you basically just squeeze it on there with a rivet. Different production machines, you got the machine tools. These operate cutting tools. That's operated by hand. Hand tools is what a machine tool they're talking about here in production. If it's standalone or you don't touch the part, then you're doing machining. Other production machines, you got presses where you change that flat piece into a sink. You got forging operations. This is where, watch that forge by fire. That's forging. Rolling mills. This is where you change the shape. You take a flat piece of metal, turn it into a big pipe or something like that. Welding machines, more and more, right, coming on, and cars are assembled by welding machines, robots. And then you got insertion tools. You got different types of equipment. You got like general purpose machines. These are skill saw, a drill, things like that. Things you can basically go to Lowe's and buy and use it, right? Then you got the special purpose machines. These things are custom made. We used to have special made grinders for our hydraulics because we were trying to hold such a tight tolerance. But they generally what you're looking for is high productivity and short cycle times. Just get these things made and out of there. If you got a production machine, you usually have a tool. This is something that can wear out and replace. And it doesn't matter if it's customized or it's just a general tool. But a lot of times it has to be designed specifically for the part or product. We used to make manifolds for hydraulic cartridge valves. And we had special tools that cut the cavities for us because we wanted a specific shape, size, and dimensions. The tooling can be exchanged with general purpose equipment. Tooling can be exchanged at the end of the production line. You can replace the drill bit with something off the shelf. I've got production equipment and tooling for various process, right? So it's just a list. Say you got casting, it's got various equipment. Special tooling would be mold. And I'll just let you look at this. We'll talk about each one of these as we get in. Organization of the book. My thought on this, you skim through your book and you see how it's organized, right? And we're just going to start in chapter 1 and work our way through. And what he's showing here is the author says we're going to start with engineering materials, go through the production, and work our way through a process. It should be fairly straightforward when we're done understanding it. Start at the beginning, finish at the end.